Hello and welcome to this second video on Act 1 Scene 1 from Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. If you haven't seen the previous video, you really need to go and find it because I'm halfway through the scene and there's a 13-minute video which goes through Act 1 Scene 1 from the beginning up until the point we get to today. I just want to say that there's a lot of sexual imagery explored in this video, so if you are watching in a class or you are at home or whatever, but you are sensitive about that sort of thing, then you might not want to watch it because Shakespeare has filled this next part of the scene with sexual innuendo and sexual imagery, which I will address in light detail, but still there will be some things which you probably wouldn't want to listen to unless you're maybe that little bit older and that little bit more mature, and you think your parents wouldn't mind you exploring some quite rude things, but at least they're in Shakespeare. So you have been warned. Okay, we were at the part in the scene where Gregory and Samson are having this banter, this back and forth banter, and we get on to the comments about maidenhead and taking the women's virginity. And Samson says, just here, the heads of the maids or their maidenheads, take it in what sense thou wilt. So he's saying, take my phrase in whatever way you like. You can interpret it how you like, Gregory. I'll either chop off their heads or take their virginity. Gregory continues the wordplay by saying they must take it in sense that feel it. There are two puns going on here. The idea of a woman taking it, in other words, taking the penis of a man, and basically what Gregory is saying is it's the women who will be taking it. So it's more sexual innuendo and wordplay. Samson says, me they shall feel while I am able to stand, and 'tis known I am a pretty piece of flesh. Well, me they shall feel while I am able to stand is basically saying the women will feel me as long as I can keep it up. So stand is not meaning to stand on his legs, but is meaning to stay erect. So for as long as I can stay erect, I'll be having sex with these women. 'Tis known I am a pretty piece of flesh, meaning everybody knows I'm well endowed. So we're getting really kind of bawdy and filthy here. And of course the Elizabethan audience, they're only about 2 or 3 minutes into the play. So you have to assume that Shakespeare knew his audience and knew they would really enjoy this filth. I think up until this point, we've been having this mask on the left-hand side, the kind of the humour and the banter and the jokes and the wordplay and the innuendo and all of that sort of thing, which would bring out the laughter. But we're about to move to a part of the scene now, which is the sad face, the conflict. So there's an interesting mixture between the two. Gregory says, "'Tis well thou art not a fish, if thou hadst been poor John. Draw thy tool, here comes 2 of the house of Montagues." So there's a little pun about, it's a good job you're not a fish, if you were you'd be dried and salted. And then the joking stops and we have draw thy tool, in other words, get your sword out. Here come 2 of the house of Montagues. So walking down the street now come Abraham and Balthazar, who are from the enemy family. And we've just had all of this bravado about how they would deal with the enemy family, and here they come. Now, in the previous video, I looked at some of the names of the Samson and Gregory. Quick look at Abraham and Balthazar. Abraham, I spent quite a while looking at. Abraham is a character from the Bible whose name was changed by God to Abraham. And it is Hebrew for father of heights, or one who flies. Now, in many ways, Abraham does fly out of the play because this is his only appearance, and I don't really think there's any significance to this name. You have to also think, who would play Abraham in the performance? It's one of those minor roles they're probably going to give to someone who's not very good at acting. They audition for the play and then they look at the cast list and they go, oh, I've got the role of Abraham, brilliant. And despite being quite a lofty name, it's, and no pun intended there with the Hebrew meaning, it's one that and he gives him a couple of lines in the first 5 minutes of the play, and then he'd be sat behind the stage for ages. So no real significance with Abraham, but Balthazar is more significant. And that ties in with the fact that Balthazar is a character who we see throughout the play, so more of a key character. Balthazar is a Greek name for protect the king. Quite a good name, really, knowing that Balthazar is about to approach the enemy family, who have been absolutely criticising his family, his household that he serves. Obviously, he's a servant of the Montagues, and we now know that with the meaning of his name here, he is going to adamantly defend the family. Interestingly about Balthazar, many people think one of the three wise men in the Bible was called Balthazar, but there's nothing about that in the Bible. It's just a sort of assumption, or even a kind of myth that's been added over time. So then we have Samson saying, "My naked weapon is out, quarrel, I will back thee." In other words, I've got my sword out, kick off, and I've got your back. And Gregory throws a little bit more wordplay in. How? Turn thy back and run? In other words, you've got my back in the sense that you're going to turn your back and run away. Samson says, "Fear me not, don't be afraid. I'm going to back you up. If this kicks off, I'm going to back you up." And Gregory says, "No, marry, I fear thee." In other words, no, I am afraid. I am afraid of what you're going to do. I think you're going to run away. This is quite an authentic scene, really. I think you might be able to relate to it if you've ever got into a fight or been against a group of others. You kind of have that fear of, if this kicks off, are you with me or whatever? Are you just going to leave me? I need, we all need to go for this, or none of us. But Gregory and Samson are both really up for it. And then Samson says, "Let us take the law of our sides, let them begin." In other words, let's try and provoke them to start the fight, because if they do, then it's not our fault and we can't get in trouble for it. So you can see that they're thinking about the ancient grudge and the civil blood that we heard about in the prologue, that this has, obviously there have been kickoffs in the past that Samson and Gregory are aware of, the fact that there will be big trouble if there's another fight. Then Gregory says, "I will frown as I pass by, and let them take it as they list." In other words, when they walk past, I'm going to pull a funny face at them, and we'll see how they react. But Samson says, "Nay, as they dare, I will bite my thumb at them, which is a disgrace to them if they bear it." So basically Samson says, no, I've got a better idea. I'm going to bite my thumb at them. And if they don't react to that, so if they just let it go and ignore that, then that's disgusting for them, and it's going to embarrass them, because biting my thumb at them is such an insult. And Samson says, "I do bite my thumb, sir." I think it's quite interesting that they use the word sir. They're being civil, they're being polite. Lots of things you could pull out of this. You could say that they're trying to avoid a brawl, being polite, not that aggressive, but just inquiring. It's like he can't let it go, but he doesn't actually want to provoke a fight. So he asks politely, and he gives a get-out clause for Samson, saying, "Are you biting your thumb at me?" So it gives Samson the opportunity to say no, So it gives Abraham the chance to win. If Samson said, "No, I was just biting it," and then Abraham would feel like, fine. But he says, "I do bite my thumb, sir." So Abraham says, "Do you bite your thumb at us, sir?" So is it specifically directed at us? Samson then, in an aside to Gregory. Now, an aside is where Samson is just talking to Gregory so that Abraham and Balthazar can't hear, but obviously the audience in the crowd would be able to hear. It says, "Is the law on our side if I say aye?" In other words, if I say yes, I was biting my thumb at them deliberately and specifically at them, will the law still be on our side if this kicks off into a fight, to be able to say that we didn't start it? Gregory says no. So Gregory says, look, if you admit that you're biting your thumb at them and then it all kicks off into a big fight, the blame is on you because you started it. So Samson says, "No, sir, I do not bite my thumb at you, sir, but I bite my thumb, sir." Look, 3 times he calls him sir there. Now, totally open to interpretation how actors perform this scene, how they intonate. They say it sarcastically. "No, sir, I do not bite my thumb at you, sir." Sarcasm in the word sir. Or is he trying to not let it kick off? "No, sir, I do not bite my thumb at you, sir, but I bite my thumb, sir." Trying to be sort of polite. Gregory says, "Do you quarrel, sir?" In other words, do you want to fight? So he directly then challenges Abraham and Balthazar. Abraham says, "Quarrel, sir? No, sir." So this kind of mock politeness again. And Samson says, "If you do, sir, I am for you. I serve as good a man as you." So in other words, if you want to fight, I am happy to have a fight. My boss is just as good as your boss. And Abraham says, "No better," meaning he's not any better than mine. And Samson says, "Well, sir." And then Gregory says, "Say better, here comes one of our master's kinsmen." And this is that classic act of someone getting a lot of bravado all of a sudden because their mate's coming along. So Samson says, "Yes, better, sir." In other words, my boss is better than yours. And Abraham says, "You lie. There's no more sir now." Samson says, "Draw if you be men. Gregory, remember thy swashing blow." And I love this bit, it cracks me up. He's saying, "Right, come on then, get your swords out, let's have a fight." And he says, "Gregory, remember that swashing blow." In other words, remember that really good move that you do with your sword. They've obviously practiced their swordsmanship, and maybe Gregory's a really, a good fighter, and Samson's sort of encouraging him, saying, "Remember that really good move." And then they fight. 2 very basic words, obviously, on a script for a play, but for the actors acting out this scene, obviously the 2 words "they fight" can really be taken as massively as you like, and you can have this huge fight scene now. Well, hopefully this video has been useful. We're at about 15 minutes. I'm going to stop now. Please do subscribe to the channel. The next part, the continued analysis of Act 1, Scene 1, will be in the next video. And there are going to be videos on all parts of the play, so please do keep watching.